Okay, we're recording.
Hooray. Or maybe not hooray.
No,
Not for you. No.
No.
We're gonna do a review on this Civil War movie that came out, which is a soon to be documentary ahead of time possibly. And Corey is not pleased about it. Not one bit. I don't think the movie was that bad. This might be a something where we differ on, but like neither one of us is gonna give it a very good rating. This might be like Transformers when I gave it like a 3, and you gave it like a 20 something. I don't remember. It wasn't a 3. This might be your lowest score ever,
Maybe.
given the vibes I'm getting right now.
I'm gonna leave it blank until we talk about it. So I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Excuse me.
And just as a fair warning, we will be spoiling pretty much the entirety of this movie because one, who cares? And 2, because to discuss reasons why the movie is bad, we have to go all the way through the ending of it. Well, I'm not going to say this movie is just straight up bad, like you will. It wasn't great. It has it had elements that could have turned in to a better movie, but then it fell into a whole lot of cliche, super predictability.
Yes.
And just kind of ultimately lazy writing that really dragged it down a whole lot. But what's the main gripes about it? Because I know how much you would love to talk about this movie.
So I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to give everybody the satisfaction of just putting it all up front and in this episode, but some of it has to deal with a little bit of I don't know, like the predictability, I would say, plays a big part of it. And the third act was just I have to talk about it, and it's
Can't put it in the words.
Yeah, I could put it into words. But, I mean, I guess talking about it would help. So, it starts with this Civil War has already been going on. I don't think we're ever given a timeline.
No, and also there's not like a whole lot of backstory as to why the Civil War took place.
So the only information we can go on, it's the only information we can go on that is said either in passing. I say in passing, because that's how it feels. It's said in passing, or it's mentioned via like a news story.
It was basically like a checkbox on the script of we need to explain why. It's like, okay, here's one line here, here's one line here, good enough, let's go.
So the things that were mentioned in no particular order was this president is in his 3rd term, which is not something that a president can do.
No, not anymore. We have had presidents go more than 2 terms.
We have?
Yeah. FDR?
FDR went 3 times?
I think it went 4. He died in his 4th term, I'm pretty sure. I mean, granted, wartime stuff like that, not totally uncommon of a concept.
You're going to have to Google that because that doesn't sound right.
I'm pretty certain. I could be wrong. But yeah, so there was a 3rd term, and the other thing that I remember hearing was like, oh, he dismantled or split apart the FBI, which I don't think is really a thing a whole lot of people would be like, whoa, that's such a huge deal kind of a thing. I think a lot of people will do so like, cool, that's pretty great. Fuck the FBI. I can't think of anything else that they described. Also, I think the way they said the sides was like California and Texas. And then they made a comment about Florida that I immediately forgot about. And then it seems like basically everyone else was neutral.
Wow, you're right. Franklin D. Roosevelt did have 4 terms.
Yeah, I know my U.S. history kind of.
Well, somebody paid attention to history class. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I don't, if like I had to split apart like who is who and all that. I don't think I could go anywhere other than California and Texas versus DC. They kind of just ignored everybody else.
Yeah, okay, so I did a little bit of research because there is a moment where they show a map. Actually, there's a couple occasions where you see the map. But there's only one that has them listed, I think, or labeled, and it's like a blink and you miss it. California and Texas are the Western forces, and then there's the I think it's the
There was something
Florida
Florida.
rebels, something like that. And then there's the Loyalist states, which was essentially like
Everyone who didn't give a shit.
Maine. No, it was like Maine down to DC, and then all the way across to it's either Utah or Nevada.
Okay.
So it like essentially cut the country in half. And then there were several states on either side of that belt that were like undeclared.
Okay.
So I think actually, let me pull up the map because I found
it'd be cool if like there was like this whole thing that like there was like an actual huge elaborate backstory that had more to it that might have made this movie more interesting.
Yeah.
But they really didn't give it too much love. Like you said, they just snuck in a map, which is like, oh cool, let's look in the map real quick.
Okay.
And it's fun for about 5 minutes.
So I was completely wrong. So there's a Florida Alliance. I was wrong to a point. Florida Alliance, which was Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee. What's that? Kentucky? I don't know. All the way to Oklahoma. Loyalist was exactly what I said, except a little bit farther down. I don't remember the fucking names. Give me a break. And then there's the Western Forces, which are actually Washington, Oregon, Idaho, looks like Montana, Utah, and a couple of the Midwest, Pacific Northwest area. And then we have the Republic of California and the Second Republic of Texas. Which was okay. So now this just adds to my frustration. So
No,
we were under the
now
impression
I'm more confused.
we're under the impression the entire fucking movie that Texas and California were a part of the Western Forces. Now
I thought they were. I thought it was just them.
maybe
Or is it just kind of like what you'd expect? Oh, there was a war. Yeah, Texas and California. Florida's gonna be over there just spinning their shit, and then no one else really matters, kind of a thing.
I pulled up the Reddit and I'm like scared to read it.
You know, there's a series that did this better. It's called Hunger Games.
You want to know who did this better, but it was not a Civil War situation. Was Fallout, because they just divided this country into 13 commonwealths, and it made it insanely easier.
Yeah, that sounds like Hunger Games.
But Hunger Games, like, you don't even know where it takes place, really, does it?
No, it is. It's like future United States.
Right, but where?
Oh, I don't know where, but it's like split up. It's split up. It's like the states in North America split up somehow.
Because to me,
there's a map for that too.
I always got like
But like
Eastern, maybe Midwest type vibe from that movie.
But that's like, but that's what I mean. Like that's a series that actually has like a lot more backstory to all that. Like there are like much more clearly defined maps and in history to establish it. This Civil War movie kind of came in just planning to be just one movie, and you can tell because they just didn't fully flesh it out. And it just kind of makes it just something to rip apart instead of something to enjoy. So, you know, just like do your due diligence, make an effort out of it. Otherwise, just casually mention the script is California and Texas and no one else gives a shit. All right. That's enough
I
bitching
kind of
about
want to
the
read
map.
these articles that talk about how they're divided, but I don't think we have enough time for that.
Nah, not for a review.
So this map just adds to my frustration. So we're it's very vague who's on what side. We were under the impression that the Western forces were California and Texas. Maybe they were, we missed a line where it was like, oh, they're the head of the forces, or they're different. They're the capitals of those forces, or whatever. I have no idea. But that was frustrating. Now, I want to preface this by saying I know the intention of this movie was not a commentary on like this our social political thing we're going through right now.
No, I will give them credit for that. They made it a very non-biased kind of thing. There it's just like, oh, conservatives are
Except
gonna
for that one
fucking
racist
hate
part.
this, or yeah. But for the most part, it was it wasn't in your face like that. That was probably the only reason they did California and Texas. Like, here's a conservative state,
Yes.
here's the liberal state. Here you go.
That was
they're best buddies now.
that was probably like a part of the script where they were like, we have to make it almost unbelievable so nobody gets worked up about it type thing.
Think of how bad the president would have to fuck up to get both Texas and California
together?
turning on.
It would probably have to be. It'd have to be very bad.
Or
In Florida.
Yeah, and Florida. I think Florida is just kind of like this would just like take the opportunities. Like, this is kind of it. Like, shit's kind of falling apart. You guys want to go over here and fuck around? Texas would do the same thing.
Florida to me is like the phrase of the United States.
The phrase.
Like they did. What did they say? They did answer the call to fight the Mad King. They just didn't show up until it was fucking over.
Yeah. Oh wow, what a fucking play. Sorry, I had basketball on too. That was really exciting.
So yeah, so that part bothered me. And then so like you said, he disbanded the FBI.
Who cares?
No explanation as to why. Probably because he would be investigated, I would assume.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people seeing this movie are going to go, "Oh, well, the FBI would probably investigate him if he was elected under false pretenses, because they're the Federal Bureau of Investigation." So that's essentially what they would do.
Didn't the kid mention like bandwidth riots or something too? Like, again, super casually. But
I
even
did not hear that part. No,
okay, well, again, it's not really.
I was
all that
probably
important.
seething in anger at that point.
I mean, it was more towards the end.
Then I was definitely seething too much anger to get any more input.
I literally got up in the middle of the movie because I knew I wasn't going to miss anything important.
Yeah, and you asked me, and I was like,
Yeah,
the guy died, and you didn't miss anything.
Obviously the guy was going to die. I knew he was going to die an hour ago. They just broadcasted it. Yeah, no, there was really just not a lot of establishment. And can I be totally honest? Because this was probably something they thought was really clever. Nick Offerman as a president was a complete miscast. I hated him as the president.
Okay.
I did not like it at all. There was no, cause when you see Nick Offerman like this, you think of Ron Swanson, who literally wants the government dissolved in Parks and Rec. He should have been on the rebel side, not the fucking president. That was completely backwards right from the beginning. And then he was basically just doing fake propaganda news conferences the entire time. That's like the only part you heard his voice. It was a huge waste.
And he was doing those broadcasts, and it was very obvious that he was losing, because it's from the very beginning. There's like you have no sense of the president is winning anything.
No, I mean, they didn't really give too much of a vibe of the direction the war was going, except for the fact that everybody and their mother was going to DC, and then it's like, well, you better get there before he gets fucking killed because everyone's going that way. So, writing was on the wall of the direction that was gonna go. Yeah, I just really did not like. I mean, I thought there could have been a much better way to cast him in this movie than the president. I think they fucked that up. The best scene and the best actor in the movie wasn't even supposed to be in the movie. And Jesse Plemons. That scene was literally the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, he wasn't meant to be in the movie. I guess the guy they had originally for that scene couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it was a conflicting schedule. So Kirsten Dunst either volunteered or someone went to her and was like, "Hey, we know your husband's with you. Can you do this part?" So he did it. And I got to be honest, he did very well.
He did very well.
Did extremely well.
It was by far the most tense scene of the movie, even more than the ending because the ending was just so predictable.
I think that's where the movie started going downhill for me.
When we had the one good scene and then we went back to trash.
It was like you had the Jesse Plemons part, and then it was like dud. And it was like I guess it was the shock value of the scene, and then you were like, oh well, it's not doing anything for me after that. Because I got to be honest. Well, no, scenes with Plemons happens, and then immediately they meet up with the army that's about to invade DC.
Yeah. Whose side was he supposed to be on? Exactly.
He was obviously supposed to be on.
The president's side. Yeah.
I would assume so. Yes.
But then didn't somebody say they were from Florida? Wouldn't he have shot them in that moment? Because he was just kind of picking and choosing who he was killing based on where they said they were from.
Right. So,
I thought as soon as they said Florida, it's like, I thought they mentioned Florida was like a rebelling or something or doing their own thing or whatever. I would have thought he would have shot them then and there. Then he just seemed to not give a shit.
I was assuming that the guy was going to get shot because he said Florida, but he had an accent, and to me, the scene reeked of racism. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, he immediately shot the guy from Hong Kong.
Yeah, and then he shot the other guy because he said, no, he shot the other guy.
The first guy said something different. I totally forgot.
Yeah, and then the other guy said Hong Kong.
I don't even know if that guy said anything.
He didn't.
He just he was just kneeling and then he shot
because
him.
He was talking. He was Plemons was monologuing.
Yeah.
And then pointed the gun, and then there was a beat, and then he shot him.
Here and this is my issue with this scene because movies do this a lot, and I really wish movies would stop doing this. It's whenever you introduce new characters that are clearly secondary characters in the middle of the movie, and then there is an immediate life-threatening scene. Everyone knows the secondary characters they just introduced are the ones who are about to get killed.
Especially when they leave with the main character.
Yeah, they always die. In that scene, and you see he kills the first guy. Not a big surprise, but I mean, well, it was a surprise in the method that he did it. But it's not a surprise that if they're gonna pick someone who was gonna die, it'd be that guy they just introduced. And then they go through this whole thing with the monologues and like, oh, where are you from, and and just casually shooting people he doesn't like. And then the guy says Hong Kong. And it's like, why would you say that as a secondary character where you're going to get shot and killed in this moment? And then he gets shot and killed in that moment.
Yeah.
There is a matter of there's shock value that comes into killing primary characters in moments like that. And there is no reason that a well-written secondary character introduced halfway through the movie couldn't become like a mainstay throughout through the rest of the film.
Yeah.
But they won't do that. I don't know why. Stop killing your secondary characters if you're just gonna kill them off. It doesn't make you attached to the characters at all.
Yeah. So that you just reminded me of another issue. So there's a moment where I don't remember where they are, but so this whole movie has to deal with like journalism and news and like
free press
and stuff like that. So when it came to, they get to a war zone, I think they actually go out of their way for it because I think it's mentioned they stop at like a rail yard where there's a fight off in the distance. And then they tell Kaylee Spaney's character, like, we're not going to go anywhere near that. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
And then they do.
And then it's like him and Kirsten Dunst, I think, that say, why don't we check it out tomorrow? So they go check it out, and to me, this is the best scene. Spoiler alert: this is the best scene in the movie.
I said everyone we were gonna spoil it because it's. I mean, we're not gonna recommend go watching it. We're just gonna shit on it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just work in our rankings into explaining the movie. But the best scene, in my opinion, was that battle scene in that building, because it had the tension. And it had the great acting, and then you had like the photography built into the scene and stuff like that. But what really bothered me, and this is the moment where I knew I knew the movie was going to go downhill, was they get upstairs there's like one guy, and he's obviously down.
Just like bleeding out.
He's bleeding out, and they get up there, and then without really thinking, they just pop him. And my problem with that is I felt like when I was seeing this movie, I was worried about a couple things. One of which was it feeding into this social political black hole we're in right now. And I was worried that there was going to be scenes or something that really fed one side or the other. And that to me fed the whole narrative of like, if you're on the other side, if you have a different opinion, like your life has no meaning type thing. So when they shot the guy, I was very upset. Because in my opinion, if there was a civil war, and I know we've had one, wouldn't we want to... I mean, also there's rules of war. I mean, the guy's wounded, so I don't think I think you work to disarm him and then you leave him be, or somebody watches him, whatever.
You can have a POW camp, that's fine.
Yeah, but like it really bothered me that the idea of trained soldiers who might be veterans were like, oh no, this guy's wounded, he's obviously pleading for help, and I just pop him. Like, that bothered me.
There was basically zero communication between the two sides back and forth. There was literally there was no diplomacy. They literally ignored that whole aspect of a part of a civil war.
Yeah,
it was just no, it was like different opinions. Nah, fuck that. See them, kill them, done.
Yes, it was strictly shoot on sight, and then it was really jarring to me because I mean, I know like a third term president, I know how that could go south. And I know the things that he did, another thing was okaying airstrikes in populated areas. That, that's awful. That's terrible. But it really bothered me that there's no sense of like, we need to salvage what country we were type thing. So...
no, there was no Abraham Lincoln moment.
Yeah, and that's another thing is like, also the whole president thing, they didn't do enough to really drive home that he was terrible. Now, I know the movie wasn't necessarily about the Civil War or a Civil War or how that would look or whatever. It was more about like free speech and the press and stuff like that. But I would have liked a little more fleshing out of the president, because it's like, oh, he has a third term. He dismantled the FBI. He okayed airstrikes on American soil. And it was like, okay, well, because of, and I'm breaking our politics rule for one time only. It's like a lot of a couple presidents we've had have done some crazy shit. Things that we don't agree with, things that we think are insane. And it's like, okay. One side thinks it's perfectly okay, which leads to the Civil War narrative. But what's crazy to me is everybody was so bloodthirsty when talking about the president. You couldn't have sneaked in some lines of like, yeah, my family was in Chicago when they carpet bombed it, or they, my family was on the East Coast, New York area when they invaded or blitzkrieg the place, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was he dismantled the FBI. Why did he dismantle the FBI? Okay, well, smart people like us could figure that out or have an idea of why. The airstrikes on people, that's universal. And then the third term was kind of vague.
I mean, it's very much, I mean, I don't think that this has ever been a movie that has ever said, shut up and go with it more than this movie. Because it's like, because there's two problems. One, it's a lot of effort to really flesh out that whole backstory for a one-off film. And especially for a film that was not even that long. I think it was under 2 hours. It did not feel very long.
Yeah.
This is like, you can't properly do a story like this in one sub 2 hour film. Like this would have had to be a series, or it needed to have a sequel to it, because otherwise you just don't give a shit. It's just a bunch of questions, and sometimes shut up and go with it is lame.
Yeah, that's it. It was a little lazy, and I think there was a lot of. I like Alex Garland because he did Dread, and I love Dread. And he said, when this movie came out and he was doing press and stuff like that, he said this is the last movie he's ever directing. He hates directing. He'd rather write. And I felt that watching this movie.
Yeah, that is such, yeah, that
because
makes a ton of sense.
It felt like,
because I bet he felt set up to fail, in a sense. It's just
maybe
like, I bet he would have rather. I bet in his mind he's like, I could have written this. I could have written this so much better.
Well, he did write it.
Wait,
I thought he did. Yeah,
you said he directed it.
he did, but I forgot to leave that point anywhere. He said he also directed it. Hold on.
Maybe you can't do. Maybe doing both of them is just ridiculous.
Well, doing both is very hard, but it's the
Hey, Ron Swanson. Don't half-ass two things. Whole-ass one thing. There you go.
Jesus Christ.
Just stick to the writing.
So
Doing them both is a lot. Maybe he felt limited on what he could do with it. Because I love the shit out of Dread. Oh my god, I didn't know I actually did Dread until you mentioned it. That is a movie I would have loved for a fucking sequel to. That was such a great film.
Yeah, so he directed it. And it says he directed it, and then he did. Yeah, he wrote it. So he just said he would rather write, but like when I was watching this movie, to jump on what you said a little bit, I don't feel like it was more he didn't get to do what he wanted to do. I thought it was he got to do too much of what he wanted to do because he was a little angsty. Because there was a lot of
that makes sense.
There was a lot of scenes where I was like, "What the fuck?" The first one being the not taking the POW guy. I guess you could rope in the executing the guys on the lawn.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes later, and then the president's trying to get away. It's the lamest bait and switch I've ever seen before in my entire life.
Oh, you saw that coming a mile away.
And what I also didn't like is you did not, and that entire scene, that is when that started happening. I wanted to leave. Like I wanted to get up and leave. I told several people, I was like, I may have said it when we left. I don't know. But I was like, no, I definitely told my dad. That is the first time I have seen a movie and there was a moment where I wanted to leave. That I just want to get up and leave. And that had it because, okay, so it's several SUVs, armored obviously.
So yeah, so like the whole third, well, I don't want the whole third act. It's like 15 minutes. But so yeah, so the last few minutes of the film is they finally get to DC and they're outside the White House, which is of course walled up and guarded. And it's basically the final assault onto the White House to capture the president. That's the scene that we're set up.
And Brian is putting it very modestly. It is said on one, maybe two occasions leading up to this that the president has like nobody left.
Yeah, that's right. They did. He said it was just Secret Service.
He said it was a ragtag bunch of soldiers, essentially a militia. And because you came back from the bathroom when that talk was happening.
Yeah.
And I said the president's only been watched by Secret Service and a militia. It was his Secret Service, and then like basically whoever did not want to surrender. So not a lot of people. So
again, I'm just getting. This is just like half-assed Hunger Games. Is literally the ending of the fourth Hunger Games movie.
So instead of having like a moment where I got to be honest with you. The last Hunger Games movie where he bombed people, that would have made sense in this moment in this movie.
Yeah.
These SUVs and the president's limo, which is armored to shit, drives off the driveway of the White House through the gate, trying to get away, right? And there's a freight. I'm gonna calm down. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little loud. There's a phrase in video games. There's a phrase in video games, and when it bleeds into movies, or when this situation goes into movies, I want to pour my soda or my drink of choice into my eyeball. It's called bullet sponge. So they're firing into this fucking limo, and if you remember the scene, there's a tank that had boxed it in.
There's a tank.
There's a tank that boxed it in. There's several Humvees that do a box, they box it in. And for about 30 seconds, I want to say, they're shooting at this limo.
There was a lot of shooting.
A lot of shooting. And the door opens, and at no point do they think, maybe these guys are coming out to surrender. Now, I know one of them's shooting. One of them pulls out, I think he's a Secret Service guy. He pulls out a gun, he's pop, shooting at him with I think it's like a Uzi.
It was an ongoing trend though. Anyone who just appeared was just immediately gunned down.
Yeah. And then what looks to be like
it was like
a secretary.
It was either like it was a secretary. It could have been his fucking wife or something.
It could have easily been his wife.
Give a shit. The second that door opened and she came out with her hands up, by the way, literally gunned down.
Even if she didn't have her hands up, you're not. What point is it to what you couldn't wait? That scene would have been. I would almost been fine if they waited a good couple beats for because you gotta when you're shooting this. And I'm not trying to. I want to do this for a fucking living, so I understand how terrible this looks for me, but I have to say it. When people are shooting scenes like that, give the audience 10 nanoseconds to assess if the fucking person has a gun or is not going to give up. Because shooting on sight, doesn't give me they really didn't give you a second to assess the situation. It was they shot and killed these people, then the camera moved to the people entering the White House.
Well, you know why they did that is because they go into the White House and then the press secretary comes out and they have that moment.
Okay, but
for just a moment. She comes out like, "Oh, we're gonna negotiate surrender, safe passage for the president." Obviously, no one's gonna fucking accept that. So, but
then they shoot her.
Yeah, then they shot her. They did not need to shoot her. There was no reason to shoot her.
She was armed. She was armed, but it was so at that point. I mean, even actually at the limo point, I was so appalled by the bloodthirsty nature of these Western forces that I was like, I honestly can't see this not having a sequel where it's like whoever's in charge, like the Hunger Games, is just as bad as the first guy. And we start this whole thing over again.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be that, obviously.
Yeah, and because it was all justified with like one little conversation where they had, because the whole thing was they were going there to interview the president. They wanted to interview him. And they said... somebody mentioned it. They're like they have orders to shoot on sight. They're not taking prisoners.
Yeah, and they were worried. They're worried about getting there too late.
Yeah.
So the movie ends with they get into the Oval Office because that's where he's hiding, which is
of course not in the bunker. By the way, fuck that. just in the fucking Oval Office with his thunder grenade in.
At this point, Kirsten Dunst's character's dead.
Oh yeah. So hold on. This is another thing I want to shit on the movie for, because this whole thing is the characters they're war photographers, so they're right with the soldiers, right in the combat, taking photos here and there. Now the thing that was kind of neat was like they would do still frames of like the pictures. That
I got to be honest, that aspect
was actually good.
Is what's holding my rating for the movie together.
Yeah, it made like the best shots very easy because all the best shots were literally the fucking photographs.
But it also added to the narrative of like, oh my God, I'm just hating this movie even more now that I explain it. The scene I was talking about where give us 10 seconds, a moment where they took a photo would have given me those 10 seconds.
Yeah. But no, they don't go with any of that because they're just trying to take pictures during all the action.
Yeah, but when they're in that one spot, I think they're in Kentucky or whatever, or they're looping around Philadelphia or whatever, and that one guy is shot after he was pinned down.
Yeah,
and she snaps a photo of him of
him dying,
but the guy trying to patch him up.
Yeah,
that photo added to that scene so much, and I felt so much more like I had so much more feeling because of that. Yeah. Whereas in any other, if they didn't do that, he's shot and killed, I don't really care. But they took the photo, showed it, and then when she was talking to Kirsten Dunst later when they were hanging out, and she was
they're just having like a photographer conversation. It was like 1 out of 30 is probably what you're really gonna come out with. And she's like, that's the one. That was the really good one you got out of this interaction. Yeah, so that whole thing was good. But the issue with this at the end, especially, was because we literally have not even talked about the main characters. So it's Kristen Dunst and some dude. I already forgot what his the actor was.
What's funny is he has a very actually like cool sounding name.
Yeah, I totally forgot what his name
Wagner
was.
Mora.
Okay, I don't know.
Only guy who could wear that Wagner name and not look like a dork.
And then they had an older guy whose face people will recognize. I'm sure he was in
Stephen McKinley.
I know him from more than anything. No. Tower Heist.
Oh, I was gonna say not Tower Heist. Dune. He played.
He was in Dune.
Rufawat, and Dune, and
super lovable guy. Everything about the guy just like breathes charisma.
Yeah, and then Kaylee Spaney.
Oh, but yeah, he was an older guy who, like, they have a conversation in the beginning. Oh yeah, I don't really care about, because I'm old and slow. If I get shot, I get shot. I don't really care. Obviously, he was gonna die. Everyone understands the old person who's gonna get established and die. But then they pick up this kid who was like an aspiring photographer, looks up to Kristen Dunst's character, has a little tiny arc of being super scared in the moment, and then at the end, all the fear is fucking gone. Doesn't give a shit about all the bullets flying around anymore. And during all this combat, like 15 minutes of it, this kid is like really putting herself out there to get these shots extremely recklessly over and over and over again. And in your mind, you're just like, well, obviously someone's going to get shot because of their recklessness here. You can't kill the kid, so kill the role model. Kristen Dunst is going to die at some point in this shot, protecting the kid. It was broadcast for the whole fucking world to see for about 10 straight minutes.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, right at the end, just before they get into the last room of the president, she goes out in the middle of a hallway for some fucking reason, and Kristen Dunst runs in to save her, and she gets shot. Never looks at her. Kid literally just says, I don't really give a shit right now because the president's in that room. I want to go get the shot. They made a point that she never looked at her. They emphasized that. Like,
wait, Kaylee Spaney didn't?
Yeah, the kid.
She did.
I did not see her do that.
So she takes
as soon as she fell, and then she just got up and was just staring like down the room where the president was.
So what happened was Kirsten Dunst shoves her, she hits the ground, and then through the still photographs of her,
but she took the shots of
Kirsten Dunst dying, which I don't know why in that moment you're thinking of doing that. And then when they are clear that hallway and to move on, she does look back at.
Did she? I totally.
She did.
That. In my, I was watching it so intently
because at that moment I was like, "That's the moment that Kristen Dunst's character, was saying, you can't, you just have to move on. Like you have to get over it."
Yeah,
because that was her thing.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I hated it.
I hated it
so
because
much.
I know it's not foreshadowing, a callback, but it just sucked because it was like
it was so unnecessary. It was so pointless.
I just didn't see. I think it could have been done maybe better. I don't know.
Maybe if she didn't run out like a dozen times.
Maybe, yeah.
into these reckless moments. It was just over and over and over again. It was just like, did you catch it that time? Oh, did you catch it this time? It's foreshadowing over and over and over and over again. Drove me nuts. And then they finally get the last shot with the president, and the guy wanted the quote. He's like, "Oh, don't let him kill me. So that's good enough." Because like an hour earlier, somebody said the most powerful men will probably disappoint you at the end. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
cool. One line.
It was
Totally saw that coming.
it was meh. So
It was such predictable, thrown in your face garbage.
yeah. So I didn't have. I'm just gonna work right into it right now.
I was supposed to be defending this movie.
And this episode is 40 minutes and 32 seconds too long. So I already said what my favorite scene was, minus the shooting of the unarmed soldier. A favorite shot it could be any of those photos they took.
Yeah, there were some pretty decent photos. Oh, like I said, the shots from the photography were
Though
the
there
best
was
shots.
one specific shot where they're driving on this road and it looks like a, town out in the boonies or whatever you want to call it. They're driving by a strip mall, and in the upper right hand corner or upper left hand corner, there's smoke in the distance. I thought while they're driving, so I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting shot. So that would be my shot. My favorite line, I don't have one.
No, I don't have one.
Do you have a favorite shot, or is it like the same thing? Just most of the shots.
It was just most of the photos, honestly. Because I mean, like I even said it while walking out of the theater. Well, they took all the good shots for us. Didn't really leave anything else to the imagination on it. Remember there was one when it was with Jesse Plemons' scene because a guy drove through there with a truck to save them, and then there was a shot of her like in the pit with all the bodies. That was a little intense.
That was a little much, yeah.
That's basically it.
In terms of a rating, I give it a 15.
I really thought we were gonna be further away from this, but I
think 15 is the lowest I've ever given it.
it is
Given
definitely the
something.
lowest. I'll be honest. I think my rating was higher when I came in here, but then now we started talking about it and shitting on it, and then I started really going more into it. And now I'm kind of right there. I'm gonna go with 22 because I did like. I don't think there was anything all that wrong with the acting for the most part. I don't think it was on them. I think it was mostly a writing issue. And then and then I did like the photography aspect of it. That I did at least like that. So there were some parts that were okay. Ultimately, the execution did not follow through.
Is it too late to get my money back?
Yes. It was too late when I left to go to the bathroom when I knew one of the main characters was going to die. I was just like, I know exactly how this is going to play out. How did he die, by the way?
Who?
Did he, older guy. Did
Well,
he
he was
die?
shot- he
Did
was
he die
shot.
in the car, or did they drive off to the side and like have a little moment?
It was actually pretty tasteful. They got to that encampment, and then it was like everybody was dealing with it their own way. So Joel, played by Wagner, was drinking because he was doing that the whole entire movie. Kaylee Spaney's character, I don't remember what she was doing.
Wait, he made it all the way to the camp?
No, he was dead. So
He died on the drive.
they don't mention it. It's just they do all these shots of each person.
Yeah.
And then show, from what I remember, they show them unloading him from the car.
Okay, so he died.
Like soldiers unloading him from the car.
Okay, that's fine.
And they like brought over like those metal boxes they take soldiers in, travel soldier bodies.
Yeah.
They were like loading, they brought one up. And then that goes to a scene where somebody is I think it's Kaylee Spaney's character is trying to wipe down his seat that's covered in blood.
That is what I came back to.
Oh, okay, so you knew that part.
That I came back to.
But no, that's exactly what they did. So it was like tasteful in that we didn't get the cheesy like, oh my god, well, because we already technically got it on when he said he was shot.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say when I thought he made it all the way to the camp. I'm like, there's no way he did not bleed out before making it into that camp.
No, he bled out.
Given where he was shot, it was literally right through the stomach. Somehow, by the way, through the whole fucking car.
Yeah, that part bothered me too.
How does he get shot?
Because it was on the inside, wasn't it?
It was on the inside. He was driving, and they were driving away.
So-
he would that bullet had to have gone through the back, the trunk of the car, the back seat, someone sitting in the back seat, and then the chair that he's sitting in, and him.
So maybe they were driving on an incline. That's how the bullet got to him. Like they were driving up a little tiny hill, and the bullet.
Maybe it did some Happy Gilmore shit where it just did like 6 ricochets and somehow ended up in his stomach.
Who knows? Anyway, I have anything else to say? Can I end this mercifully?
I think we can squeeze out another half hour if you want.
I'm fucking ending it. I'm not even gonna wait for you.